You ever meet someone who hates you for no reason? Like, no matter what you do, they roll their eyes, twist your words, or act like your very existence bothers them. Let me tell you something. They don't hate you because there's something wrong with you. They hate you because there's something powerful about you. You remind them of everything they're not ready to face in themselves. Your confidence, your peace, your growth, it exposes their insecurity. So when they hate you with their whole being, don't shrink. Don't react. Smile. Because their hate isn't proof that you're wrong. It's proof that you matter. When someone hates you with their whole being, the first instinct is to take it personally. You start replaying every conversation, every interaction, every tiny detail, wondering what you said, what you did, or what went wrong. But the truth is, their hate often has nothing to do with you and everything to do with what they see when they look at you. Their hate is a reflection of their own insecurity, not your worth. Insecurity is like a poison that seeps into how a person views others. When someone feels small on the inside, they can't stand being around someone who makes them feel even smaller. And sometimes your confidence, your peace, your growth, those things make them uncomfortable. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're doing everything they told themselves they couldn't do. When people live with unresolved pain or jealousy, they project it outward. You become the target not because you harmed them, but because you remind them of what they lack. They see your discipline, and it exposes their laziness. They see your joy, and it magnifies their emptiness. They see your progress, and it highlights their stagnation. They hate you because your existence silently calls out everything in them that they wish they could change. And instead of facing their reflection, they attack the mirror. That's what hate does. It deflects, distracts, and disguises the real problem. It's easier for them to say, "I can't stand you," than to admit, "I'm not happy with myself." This is why you'll notice that the people who hate you the loudest are often the ones who know you the least. They create stories in their heads about who you are because the truth of who you are threatens the false image they've built to protect their ego. They can't handle seeing you win because it reminds them they stopped trying. They can't stand your peace because it exposes their chaos. And it's not that they want to destroy you. They want to destroy the reminder of what they're not. That's what makes their hatred so intense. It's not about you personally, it's about the discomfort your presence creates inside of them. You have to understand something powerful. People don't throw stones at things that don't shine. The more light you carry, the more shadows you'll attract. That's not a sign to dim your light. It's proof that it's working. The person who hates you might never admit it, but deep down, they envy the parts of you they wish they had the courage to express. Your confidence, your peace, your refusal to break under pressure, it triggers something inside them. They wish they could live with that kind of freedom, but instead of learning from you, they choose to resent you. Because hate is easier than healing. When someone's insecure, they're constantly comparing themselves. They measure their worth against everyone else's. So when you walk into the room with confidence, they see it as arrogance. When you succeed, they interpret it as showing off. When you simply exist unapologetically, they label it as threatening. But what's really happening is they're seeing themselves through the lens of lack. They can't separate your success from their sense of failure. And until they deal with their insecurity, they'll continue to project it onto you like it's your fault they feel that way. But it's not. It never was. Think about it. Confident people don't waste time hating others. Secure people don't need to tear anyone down. When you're at peace with yourself, you can celebrate others without feeling small. You can watch someone else succeed and feel inspired instead of intimidated. But insecure people don't have that peace. They live in a constant state of comparison and fear. They think the only way to rise is by pulling someone else down. So when you stay true to yourself, when you keep your head high despite their hate, you become a living contradiction to their worldview. You prove that self-worth isn't built on approval, it's built on identity. And that's what threatens them the most. They want you to react. They want you to get defensive, to argue, to prove yourself. Because if they can get under your skin, they get to feel powerful for a moment. But when you stay calm, when you don't respond, when you keep moving forward, you strip their insecurity of the fuel it needs. Insecurity feeds on attention. It thrives when it can manipulate your emotions. But when you remain grounded, their hate becomes powerless. It just sits there, loud and empty, while you keep winning quietly. You might never get closure from people like this. They won't apologize, they won't admit they were wrong, and they won't suddenly start liking you. But you don't need that, because closure doesn't come from their change, it comes from your understanding. The moment you realize their hate is not a reflection of your flaws but of their fears, you stop internalizing it. You stop letting their words echo in your head. You stop shrinking to make them comfortable. You stop trying to fix what was never broken in you. You begin to see them not as enemies, but as evidence. Evidence that you've grown beyond their level of comfort. Their hate says more about them than your silence ever could. It tells you they see something in you they wish they had. It tells you that your existence challenges their comfort zone. It tells you that you're evolving while they're standing still. And that's something hate can't handle. Because hate is stagnant, it can't flow where love and growth exist. That's why your peace irritates them. That's why your confidence confuses them. That's why your success keeps them up at night. You're living proof that they could have chosen differently. And instead of owning that, they project the pain outward. You owe it to yourself not to take their projection personally. You can't control what people see in you, but you can control what you believe about yourself. When you know your worth, their hate can't define you. When you're grounded in purpose, their opinions can't shake you. And when you understand that their insecurity is their battle, not yours, you can finally walk away without resentment. Because once you stop fighting for their approval, you take back your power. You stop dancing to the rhythm of their emotions. You start living on your own terms. In the end, you don't win by proving them wrong. You win by staying true to who you are, even when you're misunderstood. You win by choosing peace over reaction. You win by realizing that their hate isn't a threat. It's a sign that you're doing something that matters. Because insecure people don't hate mediocrity. They hate what reminds them of greatness. And when they see it in you, it terrifies them. They'll talk, they'll mock, they'll twist, but none of it changes the truth. Their hate is their reflection, not your reality. The more you rise, the more their resentment grows. That's a truth most people learn the hard way. You start improving your life. Maybe you're getting healthier, more disciplined, more focused, and suddenly, people who once cheered for you begin to act different. Their energy shifts. Their words get sharper. Their smiles become tighter. They used to laugh with you, now they laugh at you. It's subtle at first, but you can feel it. That tension in the room when you talk about something good that happened to you. That silence that follows when you share an achievement. You think, what changed? But the answer is simple: you did. You rose. You grew. And growth makes small-minded people uncomfortable. See, when you start rising, you don't just change your circumstances, you change the dynamic. People who were comfortable watching you struggle start to lose their sense of control when you begin to stand tall. Because your progress does something to them. It exposes their complacency. Your discipline highlights their excuses. Your courage exposes their fear. Your progress becomes a mirror, and not everyone likes their reflection. So instead of being inspired, they become resentful. They start picking at your success, minimizing your effort, whispering things like, they've changed, as if that's a bad thing. But you're supposed to change. That's the whole point of growth. What they don't realize is that your rise isn't personal, it's purposeful. You didn't start shining to make them feel small. You started shining because you finally stopped dimming yourself. But when someone hasn't done that for themselves, they interpret your light as an attack. They think your success means their failure. They think your confidence means arrogance. They think your peace means distance. The more you rise, the more it challenges their comfort zone, and that discomfort quickly turns into resentment. Because people would rather criticize your change than confront their stagnation. And here's the irony: these are often the same people who once told you to aim higher, to do better, to never give up. They supported your dreams when they were just dreams, because your potential didn't threaten them. It was safe. It was distant. But once potential turns into progress, once you actually start living what you used to talk about, that's when things change. That's when people start to feel left behind. They'll start saying things like, you think you're better than everyone else now, not because you said that, but because that's how they feel about themselves when they compare their path to yours. You have to understand that not everyone around you is meant to go with you. Some people are only comfortable with the version of you that doesn't challenge their reality. They liked you when you were struggling, when you were relatable, when your life made them feel better about theirs. But when you start growing, when you set boundaries, when you demand more from yourself, when you stop engaging in negativity, they can't handle it. Because they realize that to stay close to you, they'd have to rise too. And that takes work. That takes accountability. That takes effort. So instead of growing with you, they resent you. Because it's easier to hate you for changing than to admit they chose to stay the same. And this is where most people make the mistake. They start shrinking again. They start lowering their standards just to make others comfortable. They water down their ambition. They silence their excitement. They pretend they're not doing that well, all to avoid triggering someone else's insecurity. But that's not humility. That's fear disguised as empathy. Real humility is staying grounded while still owning your growth. Real confidence doesn't shrink for anyone. The moment you start apologizing for your rise, you start betraying yourself. You owe it to your hard work, to your struggle, to your sacrifices to stand tall in your progress without shame. Resentment is often silent, but it's visible. You'll notice it in the way they dismiss your wins or make sarcastic comments that sting just enough to reveal their jealousy. They might start competing with you in areas you didn't even know were competitions. They might distance themselves, ghost you, or start gossiping. But all of it points to one thing: they can't handle your rise because it makes them question their own. And that's not your burden to carry. Your growth is not an insult to anyone. Your success is not an attack. Your evolution is not arrogance. When you rise, you outgrow certain conversations, habits, and relationships. Not because you think you're better, but because your priorities shift. You start craving peace more than drama. You start preferring truth over comfort. You start realizing that your energy is sacred, and that shift alone threatens people who thrive on chaos. They can't relate to your calm because they haven't faced their own storms yet. They can't relate to your self-discipline because they're still negotiating with their excuses. They can't relate to your focus because they're distracted by everything that doesn't matter. The more you rise, the more you become proof that excuses don't work, and that's what fuels their resentment. Some people will even start rewriting the story of your life to make themselves feel better. They'll say you got lucky. They'll say you changed for the worse. They'll say you forgot where you came from, but that's not truth. That's their insecurity trying to justify why they're still where they were. They don't want to admit that your discipline separated you from them, that your sacrifice built something real, that your consistency paid off. It's easier for them to pretend you just got lucky than to acknowledge that you worked while they waited. And when you recognize that, you stop needing validation from people who never saw your effort anyway. The more you rise, the more people reveal who they really are. The friends who cheer for you even when you're doing better than them, keep those close. They're rare. But the ones who grow distant, who start making passive, aggressive comments, who act like your success is a problem, they were never clapping for you. They were clapping for your potential. There's a difference. And it's important to see it clearly because your peace depends on it. The higher you climb, the smaller your circle gets. Not because you're isolating yourself, but because not everyone can breathe at that altitude. Some people need the oxygen of comfort, while you're learning to thrive in thinner air. You can't force people to celebrate your rise if they're committed to misunderstanding it. You can't explain growth to someone who only values familiarity. Your responsibility isn't to drag people along, it's to keep climbing. Because the more you rise, the more you become an example. Whether they admit it or not, your consistency challenges them. Some will resent it, but others will be inspired by it. And the ones who truly want to grow will eventually rise too. Not because you convinced them, but because you showed them it's possible. That's the beauty of growth. It separates, but it also elevates. So don't shrink. Don't dim your light to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold your glow. The more you rise, the more resistance you'll feel. But that's how you know you're breaking limits. You weren't meant to stay at the bottom with people who fear the climb. You were meant to rise, even if it means being misunderstood, even if it means losing people along the way. Because those who resent your rise are revealing where their journey ends and where yours truly begins. Silence and self-control are your greatest responses. When someone hates you with their whole being, the temptation to react is overwhelming. You want to defend yourself, correct the lies, expose the hypocrisy, or at least make them understand that their hatred is misplaced. But here's the truth. Every time you react, you give them what they want. You feed the fire. People fueled by hate don't seek resolution, they seek reaction. They want to watch you lose your calm because that validates their bitterness. Your silence, on the other hand, starves their chaos. It confuses them. It forces them to face themselves, and that's something they're not ready to do. Silence is not weakness, it's discipline. It's the strength to rise above the noise when every part of you wants to scream back. It's knowing that the moment you argue with someone committed to misunderstanding you, you lose your peace. Some battles are not meant to be fought. They're meant to be outgrown. When you respond with silence, you're not ignoring them, you're prioritizing your energy. You're saying, refuse to let your darkness pull me out of my light. And that level of control doesn't come from pride. It comes from understanding your worth. You realize that not everyone deserves access to your emotions. People who hate you want you reactive. They thrive on seeing you flustered, emotional, defensive. Because the moment you lose control, they gain it. They can twist your words, exaggerate your tone, use your reaction as proof that you're the problem. That's the trap. That's how they drag you down to their level. But silence breaks that cycle. When you don't respond, you take away their ability to manipulate the narrative. They're left standing there, talking to themselves, exposing their own toxicity while you keep moving forward. That's the beauty of silence. It makes loud people uncomfortable because it forces their words to echo back at them. Self-control is emotional maturity in motion. It's understanding that your peace is more valuable than being right in an argument. It's having the patience to let time reveal what truth can't be argued against. You don't have to prove your integrity. Consistency will do that for you. You don't have to defend your character. The way you live will speak louder than anything they say. The people who hate you will always look for moments where you slip, where you break, where you respond in anger. That's what they're waiting for. Because that one outburst gives them permission to say, "See, I told you they're not who they pretend to be." Don't give them that satisfaction. Stay still. Stay calm. Let them drown in their own noise while you stand firm in your peace. It takes strength to walk away from what insults your soul. It takes restraint to stay quiet when you have every reason to retaliate. But that's the difference between power and impulse. Impulse reacts, power restrains. Power understands that your silence says more than any argument ever could. You're not avoiding confrontation, you're choosing the battlefield. And silence is the one place where ego can't survive. People fueled by hate don't know how to exist without conflict. They feed off drama, gossip, and attention. When you refuse to participate, you take away their oxygen. Eventually, their words fade because there's nothing left to feed the fire. Self-control isn't just about holding your tongue, it's about mastering your energy. It's about knowing when to speak and when to let your peace do the talking. Because there's a version of you that's powerful when calm. You can't be manipulated. You can't be provoked. You can't be pulled into emotional traps. That version of you doesn't waste time explaining truth to liars or loyalty to betrayers. That version of you has learned that silence is not surrender. It's strategy. You don't have to win the argument when you're already winning in life. Think about how uncomfortable silence makes insecure people. They interpret your calm as arrogance, your composure as indifference, your lack of response as guilt. They can't comprehend that you've simply outgrown the need to prove yourself. They mistake your peace for weakness because they can't imagine a strength that doesn't need to shout. That's how they reveal themselves. They'll push harder, talk louder, exaggerate more, hoping to get a rise out of you. But the more they do that, and the quieter you remain, the more exposed they become. Silence forces truth to surface. It shows who's fighting for validation and who's walking in confidence. There's a certain power in being unbothered. Not because you don't care, but because you've learned that not everything deserves a reaction. Some people want chaos, and when you don't give it to them, you become unpredictable. You rob them of control. They can't manipulate someone who refuses to engage. They can't win a war that exists only in their head. And that's what silence does. It ends battles before they begin. It's saying, "I'm not playing your game." That's not weakness. That's wisdom. It's emotional clarity disguised as stillness. You'll notice that the more self-control you practice, the quieter your life becomes. Not because you're avoiding people, but because you're attracting peace. You start seeing through manipulation faster. You stop explaining yourself to people who twist your words. You stop chasing closure from those who never intended to understand you. You realize that you don't need to defend what's true. Time has a way of exposing everything. It reveals character, motives, and truth. All you have to do is stay consistent, stay composed, and let your silence work for you. Self-control doesn't mean suppressing emotion, it means mastering it. You feel everything, you just choose not to let it control you. That's real strength. Anyone can lash out when provoked, but very few can stay calm when attacked. It's easy to be kind when people are kind to you. It's easy to be composed when life is peaceful. But when you're being lied about, hated, provoked, That's where real strength is revealed. And when you hold your peace in those moments, you send a message louder than any argument could deliver that you're untouchable. Because when hate can't move you, it loses its purpose. The person who hates you wants to see you crumble. They want to see you emotional, broken, reactive. But when you remain grounded, when you smile through it, stay silent, keep working, keep shining, you destroy their entire plan. They realize that their words don't hold power anymore. They realize that their presence doesn't disturb your energy. And that's the worst punishment for someone who hates you, being completely powerless against your peace. That's why silence and self-control aren't just responses, they're armor. Every time you choose not to react, you reinforce your strength. Every time you hold your tongue, you build resilience. Every time you walk away instead of arguing, you prove that you value peace over ego. And the more you do that, the more untouchable you become. Because power isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about staying calm when others are losing their minds. It's about knowing that the truth doesn't need your defense, it just needs your patience. Silence is the loudest language of self-respect. It's saying, you don't get to pull me into your chaos. It's the realization that you can protect your energy without announcing it, that you can win without fighting, that you can rise without reacting. Because when you master your silence and your self-control, you stop giving power to hate and start taking it all back for yourself. Their hatred is confirmation that your presence has power. Think about that for a second. People don't waste energy hating what doesn't matter. They don't focus on what's irrelevant. They don't attack what's insignificant. Hate is a form of attention, and when someone despises you deeply, it's often because you hold a power that threatens them. There's something in you, your confidence, your peace, your purpose, your growth, that unsettles them. They can't stand the way you walk into a room and shift the atmosphere without even trying. They can't stand how you've survived things that should have broken you. They can't stand that no matter how much they criticize you, you keep moving forward. Their hate becomes proof that your presence carries weight. Every strong personality, every grounded soul, every person who stands firm in who they are will always attract resistance. Because your strength exposes weakness in others. Your clarity exposes confusion. Your freedom exposes fear. Your light exposes their shadows. When someone is unsettled by your existence, that's not your cue to shrink. It's your confirmation that you're standing in your power. People don't hate what's weak. They hate what's strong enough to make them question themselves. The very thing they resent about you is what they wish they had the courage to become. That's why the most powerful people often walk alone, because when you carry presence, you naturally disturb comfort zones. Your authenticity shakes up environments where pretense thrives. Your self-respect makes people who rely on manipulation feel powerless. Your peace makes those who live in chaos uneasy. They don't hate you because you did something wrong. They hate you because you exist without needing their approval. That's a kind of power most people don't understand. And what people don't understand, they fear. What they fear, they attack. So their hatred is really fear wearing a louder mask. You'll notice how hate often comes from people beneath you in growth, not above you. People who are genuinely confident, successful, or content rarely hate. They're too busy living. Hate travels upward because insecurity always looks up to find something to target. It's envy trying to disguise itself as superiority. It's someone saying, "You think you're better than me?" when deep down, they already believe you are. Hate is a confession, an admission that you've impacted them in ways they can't control. Your name in their mouth means your presence lives rent free in their mind. That's not weakness. That's influence. But this is where your perspective has to shift. Instead of seeing their hate as a wound, Start seeing it as a witness. Their words, their gossip, their cold stares, they're all silent proof that you're moving, that you're growing, that you've become something impossible to ignore. Because when you're average, no one notices. When you blend in, no one reacts. It's only when you start standing out that the noise begins. And that noise is your confirmation that you've outgrown the level where they once felt comfortable having you. You're rising, and they can't handle the altitude. Your presence has power because it's built on authenticity. You're not pretending. You're not performing. You're not chasing validation. That kind of energy is rare in a world full of masks, and it naturally threatens people who still depend on theirs. Your very existence challenges them to look at themselves, and most people would rather hate you than heal themselves. They'd rather project than reflect. They'd rather call you intimidating than admit they feel insecure around you. But their discomfort isn't your problem. It's their invitation to grow. You just happen to be the mirror that reveals what they've been avoiding. Understand this: every ounce of hate directed at you is a form of acknowledgement. They may never say it out loud, but their obsession with you, their need to watch, to comment, to compete, is proof that you've made an impression. You can't ignore something unless it matters. So when they talk about you, when they copy you, when they mock you, all they're really saying is, you matter enough for me to notice. That's power. The kind of power that can't be bought, only earned through authenticity and consistency. You'll also find that hate intensifies the moment you stop playing small. When you start setting boundaries, when you stop explaining yourself, when you start walking in confidence, that's when people start reacting. Because they preferred the version of you that apologized for existing, the one who tolerated disrespect, the one who was easy to manipulate. But when that version dies, so does their control. And when they lose control, they call it hate. But you can't take that personally. That's not hatred for you. That's grief for the power they no longer have over you. You have to learn to stand firm in that power without guilt. Because hate is a sign that you're shaking systems that were built on fear and insecurity. You're breaking patterns just by being yourself. You're unsettling people who've gotten comfortable in mediocrity. And instead of asking why they hate you, start asking why your presence stirs them so much. The answer will always lead back to your influence. Because true presence doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be real. And when you're real in a world addicted to fake, you automatically become a threat. The more powerful your presence, the quieter your response needs to be. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to prove anything. Because power doesn't chase attention. It commands it. You don't prove strength through confrontation. You prove it through consistency. Keep doing what you do. Keep shining how you shine, and let their hate do what it always does, burn itself out. Because hate is temporary. Power is permanent. People who hate you will always talk. But what they don't realize is that every time they speak your name, they amplify your influence. Every time they try to discredit you, they draw more attention to what you're doing. Every time they plot against you, they remind you that you're doing something worth noticing. Their hate becomes a spotlight you never asked for, but one that reminds you how far you've come. Because no one hates from above. Hate always looks up. That's why the most important thing you can do is keep standing tall. Let your peace be your proof. Let your results speak louder than their rumors. Let your character drown out their criticism. Because your presence isn't just powerful, it's purposeful. And the fact that it disturbs certain people means you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The next time you feel their hate, remember, it's not rejection, it's recognition. It's proof that your existence carries impact. It's confirmation that your presence shifts the energy in any room you walk into. You don't have to respond, prove, or explain. Just keep standing in your light. Because the very thing they hate in you is the very thing that makes you unforgettable.